Storytime about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer is not my storytime, I sent me on Instagram. That's when the boys came out with the list of the ugliest girls in high school. What they did was pass around some flyers with all the names on it, and then they had people write the number one ugliest girl on the list. As soon as I saw my name on the list, I wanted to die. I pretended I was sick and went home. There was this one girl who actually stood up for me and the rest of the girls, and she was actually one of the prettiest girls in the entire school. She told everyone to knock it off, but nobody listened to her. Instead, the boys added her to the list as well, but there was no way that she was going to get voted number one. I would show up every day to school that week wishing that I was dead. Finally, on Friday, they came out with the winner. And of course, everyone picked me. I was completely mortified, but I actually started laughing when I saw the list. It was like the stress from the entire week had finally accumulated, and my reaction was to just laugh. While they were all hoping that I was just going to break down and cry, I started to laugh in their faces. The teacher asked me what was wrong and I showed her the list. She ran over to the principal's office and everything became way too dramatic for me. So I literally decided to run away from school. When I got home, I told my parents everything. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer is not my storytime, I sent me on Instagram. When I got home and told my parents what happened, my dad actually started to cry. He actually did feel really bad for me. They sat me down and told me that looks weren't everything. That's when my dad told me again that I would grow out of this awkward phase. Then they decided to take me shopping to the mall. We went into this really cute clothing store that I had always wanted to go to but never had the courage to, and they actually bought me a full wardrobe. After that, that's when my mom took me to a salon and they actually did my hair. They gave me a whole hair care routine, which I had never even heard of before, and I even went and got some Noxzema, which actually the Noxzema really worked for my acne. So when I got back to school, I felt like a different person, but not really because I was still me. The principal had gone out of her way to make all the boys pay, but really they only got suspension and didn't go to school for a week. The rest of high school was actually not that bad. I did look a lot better. 5 years later, I'm absolutely gorgeous. And guess what? One of the boys who bullied me actually slipped into my DMs last week. What should I say? Is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? Now that I'm 20 and engaged, I told my fiance about what my father did. Like I said, my father wouldn't just hit me out of nowhere. He would only do it when he was punishing me and for specific reasons. But my fiance loathes my father. He thinks it's abuse and that it wasn't a normal thing for me to have to endure as a child, especially as an adult. And I've only come to realize that what my dad is doing is probably wrong because of my fiance. Before that, I never had anybody in my life tell me that what my dad was doing was wrong. But here's what happened. My fiance and I were cooking in my parents' kitchen. My dad must have been in a really bad mood because he comes into the kitchen and says, "If you don't clean up this mess, I'm gonna show your fiance how I slap the shit out of you." My father had never shown that side of him in front of my fiance. But as soon as those words came out of my father's mouth, my fiance turned to him and said, "You will never put your hands on her again." And my dad said, "That's my daughter and I can do whatever I want." My fiance asked me to leave with him and I did. My mom called us and begged us to come back, but my fiance said no. Part 3 is Is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? After my fiance stood up to my dad, we didn't speak to my family for about 2 months. That's when my fiance asked me to go to therapy. And I did. That's when I found out that what I really needed to do was fix my relationship with my father. Because he had always punished me physically, I held a lot of resentment towards him. And my father being very antiquated, he thought that he was doing the right thing. Now let me clear a few things up. He only hit me twice when I was an adult. Once when I was 19, I got a bad grade in one of my classes and he flipped out. He slapped me across the face and told me that that would teach me to do better. The second time was right after my 20th birthday. I had gotten into an argument with my mom that really wasn't such a big deal. My mom and I worked things out, but my dad thought it was inappropriate that I spoke to my mom like that. Was I very disrespectful? No. But to him, it was completely unacceptable. So he hit me once with his belt. My fiance is refusing to invite my parents to our wedding, and to be honest, I kind of agree with him. Ever since stepping away from my parents, I have so much more confidence. I'm also happier in my relationship because I'm getting to be myself, and I'm not afraid that anyone will punish me. But I do feel guilty. I want to reach out to my parents. I'm not sure. What should I do? Storytime about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers are not my storytime and send me on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Part 2 is story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to, and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says, "He's cute, but he's not that cute." What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do? Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid, she's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was gonna steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people, but she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. afterwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just gonna take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her, and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. Every time my mom's boyfriend would come over to visit her, he and I would just stare at each other. Like I said, he was my age, and he and I got along really well. Now, nothing happened, and it's not like I was trying to do anything. My mom would talk about him all the time, and I would tell her how happy I was for her, because I really was. But before you jump into the comments to criticize me, remember that my boyfriend had just broken up with me because I caught him cheating with my best friend. It was a struggle to get out of bed every single day. I thought I was gonna marry this man. My mom had an upcoming work trip, and I knew that I was gonna be alone. I told her that I was afraid of being alone, and she said, well, I can have my boyfriend come over and take you out to dinner one day. I said sure, obviously not thinking anything would ever come of it. So one day he asked me if I wanted to go to dinner and I said yes. We were at dinner for like 4 hours and it felt like a first date. We talked about so much stuff and we had so much in common. He ended up having too many drinks and we both got a little drunk. And when we got in his car, we started making out. Then we went to my house and made out some more. And then we did the dirty. This only happened 2 days ago. Let me clarify, I don't want him. I want him to be with my mom. But now he's telling me that he wants to be with me and my mom. He's asking me to basically not tell my mom that we're hooking up and wants to stay with her. What should I do? Storytime about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I'm 25 years old, and my mom just turned 40. She was 15 years old when she had me, so she was a really young mom. So obviously when my mom and dad were teenagers, they got pregnant with me. My mom hadn't even graduated from high school when she had me. My dad at the time, though, was in college, so he was a lot older than her. Obviously, looking back at their relationship, I think it was totally inappropriate. I've never said this to my dad, but I'm definitely open about it with my mom. Luckily, my grandparents stepped in and helped them financially. So I grew up in a really nice house going to a good school. The problem is that my parents basically had to do whatever my grandparents wanted them to. So my dad really hated my mom's parents. When I turned 13, my parents got divorced. My dad basically told my mom that he did not want to be in this relationship anymore. He was sick of her parents and that he didn't even want to live in the city we were living in. This was really hard for me, but it was even harder for my mom. She was left alone raising me while my dad went and partied. He was reliving his youth again, but this time the way he wanted it to be. I truly believe this, but my mom denies it. I think she started harboring resent for me. The fact that she had to stay home with me and take care of me. She wanted to go out with guys and drink and party, but I was always in the way. Part 2 is Storytime about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I'm 25 years old, and my mom just turned 40. She was 15 years old when she had me, so she was a really young mom. So obviously when my mom and dad were teenagers, they got pregnant with me. My mom hadn't even graduated from high school when she had me. My dad at the time, though, was in college, so he was a lot older than her. Obviously, looking back at their relationship, I think it was totally inappropriate. I've never said this to my dad, but I'm definitely open about it with my mom. Luckily, my grandparents stepped in and helped them financially. So I grew up in a really nice house going to a good school. The problem is that my parents basically had to do whatever my grandparents wanted them to. So my dad really hated my mom's parents. When I turned 13, my parents got divorced. My dad basically told my mom that he did not want to be in this relationship anymore. He was sick of her parents and that he didn't even want to live in the city we were living in. This was really hard for me, but it was even harder for my mom. She was left alone raising me while my dad went and partied. He was reliving his youth again, but this time the way he wanted it to be. I truly believe this, but my mom denies it. I think she started harboring resent for me. The fact that she had to stay home with me and take care of me. She wanted to go out with guys and drink and party, but I was always in the way. Part 2 is Storytime about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimers are not my storytime, it's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl, and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, do you mind if she comes over? And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time, I was gonna defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up, and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, what, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again? Instead, I smacked her. Really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye.